Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're tackling a question that honestly sounds a bit like a sci-fi movie plot. Can artificial intelligence actually save America from its jaw-dropping $39 trillion national debt? It sounds crazy, right? But some of the absolute top economic minds and global institutions are seriously debating this right now. So we're going to unpack the data to see if algorithms really can pull the country out of the red.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the $39 trillion problem, the AI productivity miracle, the hidden costs of AI, the tax revenue trap, and finally, the tough choices ahead. Let's dive in.
Starting right off with Section 1, the $39 trillion problem, and a staggering scale.
Now, to really understand why AI is being looked at as this potential savior, we first have to wrap our heads around the sheer, terrifying magnitude of the current U.S. fiscal crisis. And you know, what's really alarming here is the velocity. America's national debt just grew by its latest $1 trillion in a mere 6 months. I mean, that is a blistering pace, and it highlights exactly how fast this financial situation is escalating.
To put that into perspective, the U.S. now spends over $1 trillion annually, just on interest payments alone. Servicing that debt has efficiently outpaced what the nation spends on Medicare and even what it spends on national defense. Think about that for a second. The nation is literally paying more just to carry its past debt than it is to protect the country or, provide healthcare to seniors today.
Which brings us to Section 2, the AI productivity miracle, and outgrowing the crisis.
So here's the beacon of hope. Prominent optimists like Elon Musk and a bunch of others view artificial intelligence as a potential silver bullet. The core idea they're pitching is that an AI-driven productivity boom could basically help the U.S. simply outgrow the crisis. The thinking goes, if AI makes every worker, every factory, and every business vastly more efficient, it's going to effortlessly supercharge the economy. It would create so much new wealth that the debt naturally just shrinks by comparison.
And actually, there is clear historical precedent for this kind of tech-driven rescue. Remember the late 1990s internet boom? That massively boosted productivity, and as a result, it slashed the U.S. deficit by 60%. Fast forward to the 2020s, and a recent Brookings study suggests a similar AI boom could trigger a massive drop today. We're talking about potentially cutting the annual deficit from 6% of GDP all the way down to just 2%.
And this optimism, it's widespread. The OECD is also projecting that AI could shrink the public debt of wealthy nations by roughly 10% by the mid-2030s. The math here seems totally simple and honestly highly encouraging. Vastly higher productivity equals vastly higher economic growth, which theoretically pays off the national credit card. It's a super exciting prospect for global finance. But, well, here is where we hit a major speed bump. Section 3. The hidden costs of AI and the paradoxical twist. This is where we have to pivot sharply away from pure optimism, because it turns out higher AI productivity actually triggers some incredibly costly and paradoxical side effects. It's kind of a catch-22. First off, if AI revolutionizes medicine and drastically improves health and longevity, which is great, the government is then forced to fund Social Security and Medicare for much, much longer. Second, if automation makes companies hyper-efficient by replacing human tasks, you get job displacement. That means the government has to spend drastically more on unemployment and income support. Basically, the solution ends up creating its own massive bills.
Let's trace this dangerous inflation loop step by step because it gets even more complicated. Step 1, AI expands the economy rapidly. But Step 2, that booming expansion naturally drives up inflation. To cool that inflation down, we hit Step 3, interest rates have to jump. And finally, Step 4, higher interest rates mean U.S. borrowing becomes significantly pricier. So paradoxically, a rapidly expanding AI economy actually ends up making the cost of servicing that $39 trillion debt way more expensive.
That leads us directly into Section 4, the tax revenue trap and shifting the wealth.
Now, we really have to look at a critical structural flaw in how the U.S. actually collects its money, and how AI fundamentally breaks our tax base. Economists call this the income shift. See, AI threatens to move national income away from heavily taxed worker wages and pushes it right toward lower tax corporate profits. If machines and algorithms are generating the value instead of human labor, that wealth flows straight to the owners of the capital, not the paychecks of everyday workers.
And this creates an absolutely massive trap for the federal budget. Check this out. A staggering 85% of federal revenue comes from payroll and income taxes. That's taxes on workers. If AI shifts wealth away from those workers and over to corporations, it could actually shrink total tax collections. So even if the AI economy is absolutely booming, the specific pool of money the government relies on to pay its bills is just evaporating.
Which brings us to our final section, tough choices ahead and no magic fixes.
It is time for a massive reality check. 50%. Researchers at Brookings found that those hidden knock-on costs we just talked about, the longer lifespans, the displaced workers, the higher interest rates span that shifting tax base, they literally wipe out more than half of all the hoped-for fiscal gains from AI. Half of the miracle, just gone.
So, let's summarize exactly where that leaves us today. While AI undeniably offers some incredibly valuable economic breathing room, and hey, any boost in productivity is highly welcome, it simply isn't the effortless miracle cure that a lot of optimists were hoping for. The structural problems of the US budget are just too deep to be solved by simply plugging in a new algorithm. Ultimately, we're left with a really profound dilemma. AI's success in helping the economy depends entirely on policy, not just the technology itself. So, what's going to happen? Will policymakers tax corporations more to capture this newly shifted AI wealth? Or will they be forced to cut safety nets for displaced workers? The tech can't make these choices for us. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll leave you to think critically about how you would solve this $39 trillion puzzle.